Okay, the next bit we have to do is to glue all the flat parts together. Now this is the glue that I normally use, a Loctite 496. It's a super glue designed for metals, but there's plenty out there of a similar standard. You know, basically you should go to your local engineering supplier and ask them. You'll probably find they'll come out with a big catalogue with thousands and thousands of alternatives. But this one I found works very well. What I've found with the glue is don't go for the gel type. I found it is not as strong. There's a compromise here. It sounds as though it would be ideal for this application, but the fluid type is much better. Now, when we come to apply the part, put some of the super glue, blob of the super glue, on a bit of scrap, and you get the pin, and you dip the point of the pin in, and the surface tension will pick a tiny amount of glue up. And what you do, you just wet the internal mating face of one of the sides. Then you take the part and push it gently in and just give it 10 seconds and try and hold it square to let the glue go off. Now the first ones you should do is these 5, and the important ones not to get mixed up with is this component and this one, and this is where the dry fitting should come in, so you know which one goes where. So we'll do this next one here. Again, just a tiny little amount of glue. You don't actually want to see any of the glue. It's a tiny amount. And then hold it square. What the glue manufacturers told me is the glue cures off the moisture on the surface of the metal. Even though you can't see it, there's enough there to make it go off. And you'll find that by adding more and more glue doesn't make it a stronger joint. You just want it a nice, easy fit, and it gets a certain amount of strength from the mechanical joint, but the glue really makes it nip up. And we'll just do this last one. A very, very small amount of glue. Once you've done that, give it a few seconds to cure off. We then attach the wing. Now we don't actually want to glue the wing in position. A, it'll make too much of a mess, but B, it doesn't need it. There's enough mechanical strength in there to keep it all locked up. But we need to add the wings at this stage because it will keep all the fuselage components in line. So let's push this part together. And the other side. Okay, just let those parts dry, and as I said, don't glue the wings in. The next thing you've got to do, just as a check, get component W1 and just offer them up like that, and that's just to ensure that you've got these two components the right way around. Now is the time to change them. You'll see how they slot in together, and this one has space for a spar going along here. Don't wait till it's all fully assembled to try and change these ones. Okay, for the front end of the fuselage, I mentioned earlier in one of the clips, to make sure you know which one is top and bottom, the notches where they're closer together is the top, and the notches where they're wider apart is the bottom. And obviously the smaller one heads towards the front, so that one would glue in there. And the same idea with the one at the next one at the front. Once you've glued all these front section into position, you can then glue the top part. And the trick with gluing this part in position is work from the back and ease it forward, getting them all in a line. The reason you don't want these too tight, because at this stage it is quite fiddly to insert them all at once. Okay, the rear section is the same as the front. When you're inserting, always start from the back and work your way forward, inserting the joints. It's worth noting here as well, if you look closely at this joint, occasionally the super glue may leave like a white powdery residue. Don't worry about that, just get a bit of water on one of the cotton buds and just give it a wipe off. Just let it dry off, it'll disappear. Dry it off for the other end. Okay, the next job I've got to do is to glue in the wing ribs. You need to pull the wing slightly apart just to give space for the first rib to be glued in position initially. So again, with the pin, tiny amount of glue on, and just wet one side or one component. And remember to keep the curved surface to the top. There we go. And the next one, just work your way it'll only take about 20 or 30 seconds for the glue to go hard, but it's enough time just to let you position it. The notches mean it's easy to locate, and it also gives some mechanical strength. And you can't go wrong really with these ribs because they're all a slightly different length and they'll only go in one place. Just take your time with this process, you don't need to do it as fast as I'm going. I normally recommend to let the glue totally dry in between fitting each component, particularly if you're using the lacquered method, so you don't get glue onto your hands and transfer it onto some of the flat surfaces to spoil your finish. There's the ribs glued. And the last one to do is just to glue the nose pieces assembly that we made earlier into position. Just remember that the steeper angle goes to the bottom, the flatter angle to the top. Okay, now all the flat parts are glued together. What we need to do is mount this assembly to the stand, and we use that by means of the bottom nut joint. Turn it over and we can see the slot fits in there, and when we turn it over there's 2 holes in the wings and 2 screws in the screw pack. Just fit into there. Okay, you can see that we've secured the ball joint to the plane now, using the 2 screws, 2 brass screws, which you can polish up if you want, which I haven't done in this case, and lack them up just to make them look nice. Then pull the stand over and the joint just screws on. Now the good thing about this, doing it at this stage, it means the stand now becomes an extra pair of hands, a jig, while you're working to do the assembly of the stringers. You can just slacken the nut off, move it to whatever position you want to do, and then turn it around, tighten it up, and it's ideal. Okay, the next thing we need to do is fit the propellers. You don't really need to do it at this stage, but it's easier to show the detail on the film. So that's the locking nut, and the assembly that we've done earlier. Screws on and tightens up, and there we have it. If it is a little bit tight, you can use one of the paper spacers on the trimmed off on this back face here, and it will give you an extra tiny little bit of distance, so when it's pushed up tight you want to be able to rotate the propellers very easily.